Welcome again. Let's begin in South Africa, where people have come out in their numbers to pay their last respects to the great Archbishop Emeritus Desmond Tutu. Archbishop Tutu, who received a Nobel Peace Prize for his work against apartheid, died 4 days ago at the age of 90. On Thursday, his remains arrived at the St. George's Cathedral in Cape Town, where he will lay in state for 2 days, giving mourners a chance to bid farewell to a man known as one of the world's greatest humanitarians. Several memorials have been held across the country in his honor. Now, joining us this evening is Moruti Rene August of the Cape Town Diocese to give us a bit of a highlight of the proceedings so far. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, this is obviously a difficult time for the country and the church. There have been many memorials. Could you give us a brief snapshot of the memorials that you have attended? Maybe some of the highlights.
I would say today one of the highlights was definitely being at the Desmond Tutu Foundation with a small gathering of friends that was hosted by the Intellectual Property Trust and the Archbishop Desmond Tutu and Leia Legacy Foundation, where we had a chance to listen to some artists and some reflections from people who lived very closely with the Arch and worked with him for a number of decades.
Okay, what would you say? Are you done, or was I interrupting you?
Oh, no. I mean, there were a few others. I attended the diocesan memorial service for him this morning, and then was at the cathedral when his mortal remains arrived to lay in state. And so those are a few of the highlights that I was part of today.
What do you think the Archbishop himself would, make of these proceedings and this seeming celebration of the life that he has left?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think he would be very upset. He would hate the fuss. Whenever anybody complimented him, he would always take the same posture. He would take a step back and put his hands together and just look at the ground the whole time while whoever was speaking. And then when they were done, then he would look up and always talk about the fact that he was just doing his bit, and actually all of us must do our bit, and he wasn't able to do his bit outside of the support that he received from other people. So he would always not only defer, but include the stories of all those who made his work possible.
Yeah, so some would say that's a classic Tutu response. Let's talk about your favorite memory of the man being celebrated.
Well, there are many, but one of it is his response to people asking for photographs. And so sometimes I would be with him and people would ask him, can I take a photo? Can I take a photo? And one day I asked him, I said, Tata, what would you like me to do when people come and ask for photographs? And he looked at me and he said, look at the joy on their faces. It doesn't cost me anything, but it brings them so much joy. So please take the photos. And that's something I carry with me, just because he was always looking for ways to bring joy to other people and always looking to find ways to affirm those who were around him and to tell them in some way, you're special, and not just because God says so, but because I think so.
Well, I mean, you just took the words right off my mouth. I was going to ask you some of the controversy around his personality. He was even very outspoken on issues as controversial as homophobia. What would you say made him such a success with everything he attempted to achieve and did achieve?
Mm-hmm. I think it's because he really did believe in Ubuntu, that we are all a part of the same human family. And he used the words, we are all God's children, and there is goodness in everyone. And so it was impossible for him to demonize anybody or exclude anybody, because he saw everyone as his family, as belonging to him. And so whether you were homophobic or part of the LGBTQI plus community, he believed that there was inherent goodness in each one of those people, and that our work was to invite the goodness out of them and celebrate that and find a way for that goodness to become dynamic between us so that it produces even more goodness. I mean, you can't argue with that because, it's right there in his fundamentals. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. And because of his love for God, he was so in love with each one of his neighbors that it was impossible to not speak out when someone was excluded.
The personality you describe might take exceptions to, statues being erected in his honor and, things like that. But in your opinion, he has done a lot for humanity. How do you think such a man should be celebrated so that, generations, even yet unborn, will hear the stories of the things that he did?
Yeah, I think there are many ways we can think of this. And again, to take an example from the life of the church, there's not just the question or celebrating what he did, but taking time to ask the question why he did it. Why did Desmond Tutu bother? And I would say he's not just interested in that being true for him, but he would ask us all the question. So what is it that you believe? And how can we celebrate this idea of us belonging together in each one of our places where we find ourselves? He always used to talk about each one doing their little bit. And our former First Lady, Graça Machel, today just gave such a beautiful charge. She said, we are not only to be here to mourn and to celebrate his life, but to be inspired by his actions and then to go ahead and imitate him. And so we always tempted at this point to stand back and go, wow, he was so amazing. And to leave it at that wonder and worship phase and not transition to the work of following his example. And we can say the same about our relationship with Jesus. There's some people who spend all their time worshiping Jesus, and yet Jesus never once said, come worship me. Jesus always says, come follow me. Come do what I did. That's how we worship. And so I would say the most fitting tribute to a person like Desmond Tutu would be to ask the question, so what will my legacy be? What would I want others to imitate about me? And then go and do that so that we create a world that is not just full of celebrities or, these individual leaders popping up here and there that we get to celebrate, but actually that we take the time to celebrate everyone's contribution so that the world is more dynamic with everyone playing their part in bringing about love and goodness.
Bringing about love and goodness. Thank you very much, Rene August, for your time and sharing your experience with the celebrations or the memorials for Archbishop Desmond Tutu. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure.